We've been saying it for a couple of weeks. We actually predicted it last week. He's back. Tiger Woods is on the course again. He's playing with his son Charlie at the PNC, the parent-child event this weekend. We're all excited to see what he looks like, how he swings it. But of course, the question everyone wants to know is, will Tiger play the Masters? We will unpack that question here on Breaking Even. And if you're like me, if you're a retail investor and you're in the financial markets, you're probably a little spooked right now. Everything that's going on with the Federal Reserve, and they've announced they're going to have 3 rate hikes in 2022, 3 more in 2023. And of course, they're going to pull back on some of the QE, meaning they're not going to be making as many purchases. So what's that do to the markets? Guy Adami and Dan Nathan, they will join us to help us understand the fallout and what to do. But as always, we begin with my man here on Breaking Even, Barney Allery. How are we, pal?
I'm doing great. We've experienced some technical difficulties, Ned, but we're doing our best.
Hey, we've got to get an update on your car. If you're just joining us and this is your first time listening to the podcast, Barney's car was stolen and then it disappeared. And he thought, okay, well, insurance is going to replace it. But it turns out the police had it the whole time. It was in a lot. But I had this funny picture of they took the ball bearings of the axle out or whatever. And so your tires were going all over the joint. What's the latest?
So what the latest is, evidently no one is in a big rush to get this thing resolved other than me. So this whole process is being drawn out quite a bit. And there's a lot of hurry up and wait. But I'm under the impression that when it's all said and done, the car will be totaled. Quite honestly, I want it to be totaled for the fact that if for no other reason, it sat on the lot in the Nashville impound for 28 days, getting rained on and rained in because whoever got the car, they made sure to open up the sunroof and the passenger side window. And this thing got rained on and rained in for 28 days. And I guarantee there has to be some kind of electrical damage and who knows what other kind of damage in there. And it's been a mess.
Good luck with that. Merry Christmas, by the way.
But Ned, I'm a lot better because I can go about 5 minutes without thinking about it. So I'm getting a lot better.
The healing process has already begun.
That's right.
Tiger Woods is back. His healing process is far, Barney. That's a long time. It's farther along than anybody thought it was going to be. He's playing this weekend with his son, Charlie. What are your expectations?
Well, so that's it. So again, this is referred to as the silly season. And so there's a lot of terms you kind of take them or leave them. But this one, I love this one. And so I'm so thrilled and delighted that he plays. I'm so thrilled and delighted that he's able to play. So I can't wait to see how he's going to do. My expectations of how he's going to do are not particularly good. But just to have him out there, I'm very excited about that. And what I'm really excited about is last year I was hypnotized by young Charlie. So I'm curious to see how he's progressed in the last year. And then this is a star-studded field. There's a lot of other players that I'm very excited to see as well. But I can't wait for this event to start.
This is one of my favorite events of what you would call the silly season. I love this event. Just the father-son connection or whatever it is, parent-child, whoever is out there, father-daughter, mother-son, whatever combination you're after. I just like seeing the connections and I like the stories and they always do a great job with the production. So I will be absolutely watching this. Hey, the PGA Tour just explained their PIP, the Player Impact Program, Barney. This is the $40 million pool that kind of was it said it was the social media pool. Whoever gets the most media hits is going to get this money. It was interesting because in this interview, the PGA Tour representative talked about it was, in a way, a direct response to what was happening around the world in the world of golf and the money that's pouring into it with Greg Norman and the Saudi Arabian Tour. But there were a couple of things that I didn't realize. First, there are 5 categories or elements of how they actually rank these players in the PIP pool so they can figure out who gets number 1 to number 10 and all this big time money. I'll just give them to you because I did find them interesting. Google searches, Meltwater mentions, meaning that tracks a player, how often players mention across global media. The MVP index, which measures a player's reach on social media. The Nielsen score, which is how often a player is featured on the television broadcast. And then the Q score, which is an old measurement of an entity's familiarity and appeal. So again, they do have a schematic. They do have, I guess, a spreadsheet, some type of quantitative. Each one of these has a score, and then they're going to add it up. And that score is how you determine whether you're 1 through 10. But what I also found interesting, Barney, was that in order to get your money, if you are in the top 10, you either have to do something, play in a tournament that you haven't played in recently, or you have to do something for the tour, whether it's a question and answer, whether it's some type of outing. In order to get your money, there's a quid pro quo. Yeah, you finished third, but in order to get your money, we're going to need you to play in this tournament, or we're going to need you to go over here and do this question and answer. But that's fair. I actually think that's totally fair, and I think it's going to be great for some of the smaller tournaments. Maybe don't get marquee names. This is going to be an element that helps those tournaments start to get the big players in a little bit more attention. I like it.
I hear you talking, Ned, but all I hear is Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods. And so whatever can be done to funnel more money to Tiger Woods, because rest assured, if he's not at the top of that pyramid, I will be shocked and stunned.
Yes, I think he is certainly now at the top of the pyramid, given that he's back playing. There's also this 5-year window, and I thought this was interesting in the PIP, that you can still qualify for this. So, for example, if Tiger Woods wasn't able to play for 5 years, and he could still, because he's the most recognizable athlete perhaps on the planet, he could still win this thing. Just by being his on-course television score, you wouldn't think it's going to be that high, but of course, Tiger can be on TV pretty much anytime he wants. Tiger's going to win this thing, hands down.
Ned, he smooths a 7-iron and puts it out on social media and almost single-handedly broke the internet. And so, again, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods.
Yeah. I think, if you just joined us on the podcast here on Breaking Even, Barney and I typically do every podcast. We do 2 segments called I Am So Stupid, things that made us say, my gosh, I'm so stupid during the week. And then something that shuts your mouth, which makes you kind of stop and say, oh, shut your mouth. Do that again. I think for me, it's just Tiger's playing. Barn, I mean, we saw the car. I've heard stories about how they were going to amputate his leg, but they didn't because it was Tiger Woods. And now he's back playing. Whether he plays at a PGA Tour level or not, to be determined. But the fact that he's able to play, shut your mouth. Absolutely amazing. Great for the game, and even better for his children that they're going to have Tiger around and he can get out on the golf course with him.
Absolutely.
My I Am So Stupid is I had this amazing tournament this past week that I played Pebble Beach, I played Spanish Bay, Spyglass, Poppy Hills, and then topped it off with Cypress Point. And I didn't practice hardly at all going into it. Turns out if you don't practice, you typically play terrible. I am so stupid. You go out there and you play these amazing golf courses and you just hack it around. It's still fun. The guys I were with were amazing. But you want to play well when you go play these places. Last year, remember, I had that Albatross.
Yes, the shot heard around the world.
Right, and won the pro division of the In His Grip World Pro-Am. My team won the entire enchilada. This tournament? I did drink some good bourbon, but I did not play good golf.
That's good.
I am so stupid. Hey, next week, so we start our year in review. We always say we're going to do it during one show, and it ends up taking 2. So let's start next week, shall we?
Perfect. Can't wait.
And we're also going to have Joe Buck on the show. Going to record an interview with him and then kind of parse it out over a couple of shows as we get into the golf season. We start looking ahead to Hawaii and some sunshine.
Nice.
Besides that, let's just all enjoy Tiger. And hey, Barn, let's send our condolences, our thoughts, and our prayers to all of those in Kentucky and the neighboring states and counties. This tornado that ripped through there apparently was the longest ever recorded in the United States to stay on the ground. Over 200 miles, this thing just devastated. And having been through a lot of this in the Nashville area with the floods and tornadoes, just a couple of years ago now, we can empathize in a lot of ways. But I know you've got good friends up there, and just all of them in our thoughts and in our prayers.
Absolutely, because the devastation there, it just looks like a war zone, and it's terrible.
Best to all of them, and we'll be sending our support and our love, and we'll also be watching some Tiger Woods golf. All right, Barn, let's call it a day. See you next week.
Yep.
All
right, see you next week.
You looking for a vacation? Maybe somewhere you haven't been before, somewhere off the beaten path? Consider Mississippi. You can jump on their website, visitmississippi.org. They had the state fair going on just a couple of weeks ago. They had the PGA Tour in Jackson, Mississippi, the Sanderson Farms Championship. Cruising the Coast, the best automobile show in the country. Deion Sanders, Jackson State. They had 52,000 fans turn up last week at the Jackson State football game. There's so much to do in Mississippi. You can hit the coast. You can gamble a little bit, bet on the sports book, play golf. If you love music, the Grammy Museum. Just check it out. Visit Mississippi.org. I started doing radio and commentary work a little over 10 years ago now. Started on PGAtour.com and then had a local radio show in Nashville, Tennessee. I just retired from professional golf. Was trying to figure out is this going to work and be able to make a career out of radio and doing commentary. And one of my first guests on the local radio show that I had was an old friend who was a caddy on tour. And he still is a caddy on tour. He's fantastic at his job, but is an even better storyteller. He has won with Brian Gay. He worked and won with Austin Cook. He worked with Stuart Sink. He won on the PGA Tour Champions while he was looping for Vijay Singh, and then he fired Vijay. And he's going to tell the story here on Breaking Even. Please welcome my buddy, Kip Henley. What's the kind of off-season here, slowdown look like for you?
Didn't caddy too often. I signed on with McGirt towards the last half of the year, and he's playing on a major medical. So he's picking, he only has like a limited amount of starts. So he's really picking his spots. So I've been sitting on the couch a lot. We got to get him some status fast when we start back around. He's played well. I started with him at Connecticut, and to tell you the truth, this game was kind of rough. But he's coming off of 2 years of major hip surgeries, and 2 years of being away from the game. So, but man, we're trending up like crazy in the events we're playing in. But he just needs more starts, and we're going to start back at Honolulu. So I'm off for a little while.
Good.
I've been actually Ubering around town just to help pay some bills.
I'm going to be out there in Honolulu, so I'll see you guys. He and I've had the same hip surgery, that labor repair, and that basically put me out of the game into early retirement. It's no joke. So people always wonder when you're caddying for somebody and they're hurt or they take time, are you allowed to go caddy for somebody else, or is it an exclusive deal?
It's going to be up to the individual. He's my boss, but William McGirt is the least pretentious, least prideful. He is so chill about, he says, Kip, you get a bag, go work. He said, I don't care who it is or how long it is, as long as you're my guy when I start back. And he's such a quality cat to work for. Good human, good family man. I'm on top of the world. Once McGirt takes off, and he's going to take off. Once he takes off, he's going to be such a treat to work for, because I am an absolute team member, like I've as big a team member as I've ever been before caddying, which makes it great. And,
that's saying a lot.
Oh my God, if a guy you're out there grinding and traveling and doing anything in the world that you can think of to help them get better, man, if they make you feel like you're on their team and they say and they say things like that and thank you and geez, Kip, you've made such a difference. That's all a caddy. I mean, obviously the checks coming in are while we're doing it, but there's nothing more important than hearing something like that out of your guy, Ned. And he does it, man.
How many starts does he have left?
I think he's down to 15. We just got back from Sea Island. He had an okay week. He had a mediocre week on the greens. And, man, he's a fabulous putter, but he had a mediocre week on the greens. He still hasn't had any bad days on the greens with me, but he hasn't really had any great days on the greens. Maybe one or two, but I think he averaged, like 15 greens a day there in regulation, and the wind pumped 2 or 3 days. So, I mean, his ball striking is absolutely and that's what's going to happen. When we start back in Honolulu, put old McGirt on one of your ladder picks on your fantasy teams.
I like that. Get some inside early information. I bet I can get some good odds on him. And I've known Willie for a long time and played some mini tour stuff with him back in the day when hickory shafts and persimmon woods were probably still in style. But the one thing he can always do is putt, right? And good putters are always good putters. So if he's hitting the ball well, I love the fact that you think that he has the prospects, because it's so tough, right? When you're on a medical exemption, the clock is ticking and you can hear it. And so how does he have, whether it's points or dollars, does he know how much he needs to make in order to, is it the year that he got hurt? So 2 years ago, he has to earn equivalent of 125?
I think you know what? I don't want to put any undue pressure on the guy, so I don't ask him about that. I just show up on Monday or Tuesday, man. It's all about trying to figure out a way to win the golf tournament. That's all we talk about the whole week is just getting up there, you know. So he's going to do it again. He's only 42, and his health is coming back. His speed is coming back, you know. He's not one of the bombers, so he's going to be limited on the spots where he can actually win. You know, he can play well. You know, he won Jack Nicklaus's tournament.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of things well to win that place.
But it's pretty much a bomber's paradise, too. You know, he sent it over those cover bunkers on the dog legs and stuff, and he couldn't, and he won there. So he's like Furyk, you know, there's one or two guys that aren't far hitters in the game that they find a way to play good on the great golf courses. And I mean, that was one thing I always paid so close attention to Furyk when we got paired with him. How's this guy? He can't fly at 270, you know? And he hangs in there with these guys week in, week out, almost every week. And I got my own opinions about that, but that's another podcast. But McGirt seems to be able to get it done.
Give me a quick synopsis of your thoughts on why Jim Furyk has been able to have such a successful career not being a bomber.
The only thing I can come up with, I mean, besides the guy's brain, is his golf brain is just, it's big. He's just a smart cat, you know. He don't ever give up. But the only physical thing about watching him go around the golf course, besides making every putt and getting it up and down and driving it straight, the one thing I thought that separated him and Brian Gay, when I thought, how does this guy do it every single week? And Brian plays good, but he seems to be limited on the big courses. He doesn't. And that's when Brian was, 10 or 15 yards shorter than he is now. And I thought, how does this guy do it and my guy don't? Because they're both great putters. And the only thing I could decide that was different in those two guys' game was Furyk hit high fades with his irons. It's the only, I swear, I did everything I could to think, what's the difference? My guy putts as good as he does. He pitches it better than he does. His golf brain is just as big. You know, they drive it about the same distance. My guy's ass straighter. Why does Furyk consistently beat Brian Gay? And the only thing I could find is the big, higher flighted irons, and they were fades. I think even his wedges were a little bit higher than Brian Gay's. I don't think he controlled the distances as well, if that makes any sense to anybody, as Brian Gay, but they had a little bit more bite. So when we went to the big golf courses with the harder greens, like the majors, he could find a way to get the ball to stay on the greens. Firm greens are, more than anything, firm, hard greens are a bomber's delight. That gives the advantage to the bombers more than big, giant, open fairways. I don't care what anybody says. The guys that could send the irons up in the air and spin them, those are the guys that play good in majors all the time.
So you always hear that chicks dig the long ball. Remember that ad campaign with the Braves with Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine where they were trying to learn how to hit home runs. I start looking at the game of golf now and just how much money over the past really weeks now, but a couple of months anyway, has come into the game with the new tour and the Saudi money, the Asian tour, and then the DP World Tour / European Tour. The recent announcement from the PGA Tour that they too are adding money to the purses. So what I want to know from you is, how's that going to trickle down to the caddies? You're going to see any of it in terms of, obviously, prize money, yes, but what about, there's always kind of this running commentary on which tournament has the best caddy area and who treats the caddies the best. You think there's going to be some trickle-down effect that eventually makes its way down to the caddies?
Yeah, but slightly. I think it's more this, the purses are going to just explode. And, I'm 61 years old, and obviously the father time is chasing me down out there on building a caddy. I feel like I'll be caddying. If somebody will still have me, I'll be caddying when I'm 80 because I just love it so much.
Well, Fluff's like 75, right?
At least. I'm 61.
He's still out there doing it. You got plenty of time, man.
But the purse is good. God, Ned, they've exploded, man. If you get a guy now, if you had a Matt Kuchar now, and Matt Kuchar in his prime where he was top 10, on that money list, or top 15 even, on that money list, like 5 or 6 straight years. If you can grab a hold of a cat like that, I mean, a caddy now, man, they're going to make $400,000 or $500,000 a year every year that happens.
Are relationships changing with how caddies negotiate their deals with players? I mean, it used to be pretty standard that it was 10% of a win, 5%, maybe 8% of a top 10, and then 3% whatever of a cut made plus a weekly salary. Is that still the same, or has it evolved as these purses go
It's
up?
evolved a lot more, the weekly salary or whatever they pay the caddies to get to from, site to site. We pay all our expenses, So all our hotel, rental car, airfare, tipping, food, beer.
A lot of beer. That's where the scales tip. Right.
Beer. But everything comes out of our pocket. But that number has really started to go up as well, that base salary number. It used to be a lot of guys got $1,000 a week, and then there was $1,200. And occasionally you'd see the guys, the really big dog caddies were making $2,000 a week salary. But there's plenty of those guys now. There's plenty of guys making $2,000 a week salary. But, rental cars used to be $180 for a week. Now they're $400 for the week. So it's all relative.
Breaking Even is brought to you by Risk Reversal Media. You can find us at riskreversal.com and check out our podcast, On the Tape. Each week, Guy Adami, Danny Moses, and me, Dan Nathan, discuss the biggest market-moving headlines and chat with some of the most influential people on Wall Street, all in an effort to help our listeners make smarter investment decisions. So follow us On the Tape in your preferred podcast store.
I don't even know how to summarize or introduce this segment, because earlier today, Wednesday afternoon, I jumped on the Trading Spaces on Twitter with Guy Adami and Dan Nathan. And this was before the Fed spoke. This was before we knew anything. There was a lot of fear in the air. And so I wanted to know, hey guys, what do I do? Just paint me a picture of where we are here. And in the meantime, since we recorded that, and since I'm doing this introduction, the Fed has come out. They said what they're going to do. And now the stock market has turned around, and apparently this Santa Claus rally is back on. But I think that's the moral of this entire story, is that the emotional control and discipline you have to try to invest in these markets, especially as a guy like myself, the retail side. I don't know. I just don't know. It's harder than golf. I know that much. Have a listen.
We have a very special guest that just joined us here, Ned Michaels. Breaking Even with Ned Michaels.
I hope Ned heard me say what a badass he is.
Danny Moses carried me, boys. That guy's a competitor.
But that's bourgeois. I mean, Danny Moses carried your bag. That's the only thing he carried.
Well, remember the night before we said, are we playing to have fun or are we playing to win? And he was very emphatic. Why else would you play? We're here to win.
I respect that,
hey,
by the way.
Go follow Ned, Breaking Even. It's a great podcast. He has a buddy of his who's also a great golfer, Barney. He's got the coach. He's got this coach comes on, and you guys, he's a handicapper. He's a professional handicapper. And the way you guys talk about the upcoming golf and your insight into it and his handicapping, and then you guys hit a lot of other sports stuff. You guys talk markets. It's a great podcast. Guy, Danny, and I have really, really enjoyed being a part of it. So it's always fun. And Ned is a budding superstar. Oh, by the way, you will see Ned on the sidelines on many of the biggest golf tournaments, right, Ned? So thanks for joining us, bud. What do you got going on?
Well, no, thanks for everything that you all are doing out at Risk Reversal and having us as part of your platform. And yeah, I'm going to have a big year this year. ESPN just announced their partnership with the PGA Tour, so I'm going to be doing quite a few events for ESPN.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
It's going to be great. It's going to be.
You're going to be on the Ocho. I just wanted to say that. You don't have to respond to that. I just felt like saying it.
I thought this was the Ocho.
So no, I don't.
By the way,
no, but hold on. So we have this little segment where we go on Breaking Even, Guy, Danny, or myself, sometimes all of us, and we basically take an attempt to fix Ned's swing at the markets. I think this is what we're doing right now, right, Ned? So you're going to be like.
Yeah, I remain. I'm undefeated and being the most terrible options trader on the planet. Although I have gotten better. You guys, the coaching you've given me is helping. But you know that it's an emergency style if I'm coming in here on the bat phone straight to your trading spaces. As a retail guy who's still learning all this whole situation has me kind of freaked out and pretty skittish. So I want to know from you all, do you see this as a buying opportunity? Or is this hey, just keep everything real close right now and see what shakes out? If it is a buying opportunity, where should I be looking?
So here's the deal. Pull up Peloton, okay? So Peloton's down 60%. Look at the chart there. This stock could get cut in half again, round trip the whole move, and it would be nothing. I'm just telling you, it would be nothing. And Guy and I were talking about this earlier. Look at a Zoom, okay? This stock, again, what did it take? 490, okay, this year. and it's trading at 175. Look at where that thing could round trip. And if you have not been in the markets and you do not remember what it was like in 01 and 02, where there was no low enough, I'm telling you guys, things that go down 50% over a year, they can get cut in half again. I know that sounds like some simple math, but when you see it and you keep adding to these stories, you're like, how low can it go? So to me, I'm just saying that we have a really weird situation in the markets where it doesn't look that bad. You're up 23% if you just bought a SPY on Jan 1, right? But if you look at like all the stocks that you could be down 30, 40, 50% per that Carter Worth tweet, it's really tough out there. Guy, help me out here.
In 1990, I was making a couple bucks, and I bought a used, maybe it was 91. I bought a used black Jaguar XJS, 2-door, 12-cylinder car. I mean, you look at that thing, and it was the best-looking thing you've ever seen in your life. But under the hood, it was a nightmare. And at a certain point, that comes back and haunts everybody. Came back and haunted me. So that's what's going on in the market right now. The market looks great. Everything looks great. But under the hood, beneath the surface, are a lot of things that are wrong. I'll say this. There are certain stocks, obviously, that if you've missed, you're waiting for an opportunity. And I'll give you Apple, for example. I think if Apple, and I happen to think it's going to get there, if Apple to get down to 153, 154, that's your opportunity. And you're closing in on something in Amazon around the 3250, 3300 level, and Microsoft as well. I mean, the names that everybody talks about very quietly are starting to give a little back. I think those are the names you want to have.
So just so you know, Ned, usually Guy would have to say, if he was giving that little thing about the Jaguar, he'd have to say to Melissa Lee on Fast Money, he'd say, please indulge me for a moment here. That's what you would say.
By the way, I'll tell you that car, 0 to 60, not very good. 60 to 100, it was like you're in a friggin' rocket ship. It was unbelievable.
Hey, that's what I want, a rocket ship with a bad engine. Perfect.
Yeah,
Sounds like it.
I mean, yeah.
I'm not riding with you.
You, let me tell you something. You want to ride with me, sucker. You'd have a lot of fun.
Well, I hope I ride with you on some of the stock action that you're talking about, because one of the things that really has freaked me out is I've been invested in this T. Rowe Price blue chip growth fund for quite a while now, and it's
are you
down 10%.
Like 90 years old? I mean,
yeah. Well, actually, I got it from a guy who's 86. Right when COVID happened, he said, "Throw some money at this." So I did. It was pretty good. I got in a long time ago, so it's done well. But it's down 10% yesterday or something. So these are big companies, and that's a big move for something like this. So that really freaked me out.
Well, think about that. I mean, you just sort of hit the nail on the head. Something like that. I can't speak. I can speak intelligently about a lot of things. Ranger hockey, the history of Georgetown University, how Paul Maloney was the best looking guy in our class, things like that. But I can't speak intelligently about the T. Rowe thing you just mentioned. But what I will say is I guarantee it's not built to have a 10% move to the downside. That, to me, is disturbing.
So if it's a blue chip growth fund, it probably looks like the QQQ, you know? And I'm just saying, the QQQ is a lot cheaper. Just buy an ETF like that. That's my take. Now, I'm just telling you that also, I think the risk in the QQQ, the NASDAQ 100 right now, are those top 5 or 6 names that make up nearly half the weight of this index of 100 stocks. But by the same token, look at the outperformance of the NASDAQ 100 over that same time period. There will come a day when the NASDAQ 100 is down 5 or 6% in the not so distant future, but you're not paying these exorbitant fees for some actively managed fund. That's my take about funds like that versus just saying a QQQ or something like that, an index ETF.
Understood. By the way, when I got in it, I didn't understand there were fees involved. So cut me a little slack there.
We call that the fine print. By the way, Ned, if you want to hear me get upset, Dan's about to do it to me. What did you want to tell the Fed, Dan? Because I know you just
all
dying.
Right, so
what do they call it when you tweak somebody?
You call tweaking them. So no, there was a headline from the Fed about the reverse repo. The reverse repo facility. Yes, there was. Yes.
Stop.
Yeah,
no, there was not.
It was read in Bloomberg, you know, and if it's read in Bloomberg, that's some important stuff.
Let me ask you a question. Who's been talking about that for the last 3 months? Yeah, exactly. And if you want to, now you hear it in my voice, you can hear me change tone. Go back and look. Everybody says that COVID was the reason the market got cratered in February, March of 2000, and I totally get that. That was definitely the match. But the tinderbox was set forth in September of 2019 when the overnight repo market absolutely blew up, and nobody's been able to explain that to me since. So now this reverse repo market, which is exactly that, the opposite of, same thing is happening, and people will say, oh, it's not a big deal. Trust me, the plumbing is a big deal. And the fact that these geniuses actually said something about it, I got to go back and look about what they said. I mean, yeah.
All right.
I don't know who Katie is again, but you better borrow that story.
So the headline was Federal Reserve's reverse repo use hits record $1.62 trillion.
Yeah.
85 participants placed $1.62 trillion at the Fed's overnight reverse repurchase agreement facility, in which counterparts like money market funds can place cash with the central bank.
It means there's too much freaking money in the system.
All right, so that's a segue to the Fed. Okay, so they're going to complete this 2-day meeting, and it's in an hour or so. Their hawkish stance that they just started to take, they got rid of the word transitory as it relates to inflation,
they retired.
So are they doing this to are they worried about the plumbing here? Yeah.
Well, they should. Let me tell you something. They should be worried about a lot of things. And most of the things they should be worried about, they created themselves, number one. Number two, as they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. I say that because at least now they're starting to acknowledge that maybe inflation is a problem. So they are late to this dance, but at least
all right, guys, check out also Danny Moses had a really great tweet thread. And I think it's probably his first ever tweet thread. He gave some thoughts on the Federal Reserve meeting. He recapped the actions over the last month and a half, some really good stuff. But he ends the thread, Guy, and you'll love this. He goes, "I look forward to a time when bottoms-up research will matter again." Sign off, drop the mic, Danny Moses. Guy, give me a little. You read the thread. It was really good stuff.
It's really thoughtful stuff. I mean, it's very extraordinarily thoughtful stuff coming from a guy who worked with some of the greatest minds in the market for a long time, and he continues to be that person. The problem we have, we're society now that wants everything immediately. So if you say something and it doesn't happen 30 seconds later, people say, he or she doesn't know what they're talking about. Trust me, they do. And oh, by the way, folks, which I love to say, go back and look what Michael Burry said over the summer about the ARC ETF. And this time, his timing was spot on. He couldn't have been more prescient. And I don't know if there's a C in that or not, but he could not have been more prescient in terms of some of the concerns he had about the ARC ETF and then subsequently.
Yeah, I will tell you this. Danny has had his rot on a couple of occasions over the last few months, his rip off the tape. Our podcast is called On the Tape. You see what we did there. I think he came up with that. He's pretty creative on Carvana. And he really was breaking down that this company is really not in the business of selling cars. They're in the business of financing cars. And this stock is making a new 52-week low today. So that's why you listen to On the Tape. You get these musings from Danny Moses. You get Guy Adami's commentary on the New York Rangers and the New York Football Giants, and Danny's.
And I'm going to say this again: if anybody from the Giant organization is listening to this thing, and if you have any say whatsoever, I'm telling you right now, if you do anything other than draft players with the 2 picks you have in the top 7 in 2022. You should be. The entire organization should be fired.
All right, Ned, are you still with us? What else you got for us, man? Because we got a couple more minutes.
Well, first of all, that was interesting. I actually knew what you were talking about because I do listen to On the Tape,
there you go.
And I may have dabbled in some Carvana, given all the conversations you had about the repo and all this kind of stuff. So it turns out you guys do know what you're talking about. So every once in a while. So the last question I have for you is something that I just want to kind of pull the grenade pin and throw this in between you both and then get out of here. I'm curious if you all have come to any type of consensus on the oil trade and oil companies. Because we talked last. Right. You're going different directions.
You seem to be fascinated. You're trading options in the OIH, and it sounds like calls. I literally think, and Amanda will post this, this is literally one of the most ominous looking charts in oil services. It looks like a massive head and shoulders, that whole kind of range that we're about to enter in between 180 and 160. But what's crazy on the 1 year basis, it looks like it's been consolidating. Back it out on 5 years. This ETF is below the breakdown level from 2020, early 2020. And it's spending a lot of time here. And I got to tell you, man, I just don't think that inflation, I think the Fed
top ticked. I know Guy agrees with me here. I think you thought they were very wrong about inflation and their expectations for it to be transitory. They literally pulled the goalie at the moment, right, that it was about to go the other way. I'm just telling you. And so I just don't think that we're going to have this sort of recovery, this global reflation trade. I think oil probably comes in. I think a lot of these industrial commodities come in. I think this whole idea of scarcity, and because of the supply chain bottlenecks and the like, I think we're going to go to surpluses next year. And I think that the Fed is going to be hiking or more hawkish into a slowing economy. And I just don't think it's going to be a great situation for stocks. And I think that look what's going on in these high valuation names, just a little slight tick up in this 2-year yield, and the 10-year doesn't go anywhere. Okay. And look at what's happened to valuations. So I think that's going to be a story of 2020. I'm out.
Audi, Dan 5,000. And by the way, I have no sympathy for those dipshits. So I'm just saying, too bad. You know what happened to them? They got squeezed. You know when you're short a stock and it goes up every day for 6 months and you finally say no mas, like Roberto Duran did against Sugar Ray Leonard? That's what happens. No mas. And you know what? Too effing bad. You blew it. And now they can't go back because they'll look even dumber than they look now.
Well, they'll go back, Guy, when the stock market's down 20% from their highs. They're just going to get more dovish.
Well, if you listen to James Gorman, who runs, I think, Morgan Stanley, by the way, is that right? He said, you know what? They shouldn't be worried about the market. They're too worried about the market, and they shouldn't be. Good for
but Guy, you bring up the point all the time. I mean, the negative wealth effect, is when the stock market goes down. The other thing is, like, look at these asset bubbles. Look at what's going on with housing. Look at what's going on with crypto. I'm going to tell you guys this, and I spent a lot of time over the weekend listening to a bunch of Twitter Spaces on NFTs, and I'm really into it. I find it really interesting. When I say I'm really into it, I don't mean I'm buying a bunch of this or whatever. I'm really interested in the psychology around it, and there's a lot of people out there, okay, who own financial instruments that they think are really scarce and really unique, and they're going to continue to go higher, that will not. And they're going to find out how illiquid these things are when they need to actually raise some cash because they overpaid for some digital PFP thingy-majiggy. And I don't mean to minimize what's going on. There's a revolution going on as it relates to like creators being able to monetize their art or whatever the hell it is. But when it comes to investors, you know what I mean? We had Packy McCormick on our new podcast, OK Computer, guys. Check that one out. It's going to be coming out. And he basically said, listen, I'm into it. I get it. I see all the use cases. But if you're buying these things right here, you better love them and you better be prepared for them not to be worth anything. And that's a really important point. So 2022 is the reckoning where all of this stuff, I think people recognize the fact that we lost our freaking minds when it comes to a lot of this. And Guy, I know you feel like the Fed has done that and they are a huge reason for all of this speculation. They pushed us all out on the risk curve. But I think a lot of things that everyone believes right now about the investment environment are going to be turned on their head next year. How's that?
Right on, man. That's all right. Well, listen.
You're Guy Adami. I'm Dan Nathan. We do these Twitter Spaces or trading spaces every Monday and Wednesday at 1:00. They go in our podcast store on the tape podcast feed. It is sponsored by CME Group. They are the sponsor of our podcast that drops every Friday. We're going to tape a really great episode. I know it's going to be great with Scott Wapner. He is the host of the Halftime Report on CNBC. That's going to drop Friday morning. Ned Michaels joined us today. Ned is a stud. Ned is one of Guy and mine and Danny Moses' favorite people that we met in 2021. We are so glad that his podcast, Breaking Even with Ned Michaels, is on the Risk Reversal Media podcast platform thingamajiggy. And you can check that out. That drops every Wednesday. Ned, take us out, brother. Thanks for joining us.
I'm going to go sell all of my OIH and I don't know, go bury myself in the
Sorry, brother.
somewhere.
We love you.
Yeah. Yep. I did sell my OIH. It was okay. I'm happy that I did. This is just bizarre. How can the world be coming to an end and somebody's pulling the drain in the bathtub of the markets and literally 20 minutes later, it's a celebration. It's putting money in your stockings. I just don't get it. I don't know what to tell you. Keep swinging. Thanks for listening to Breaking Even with me, Ned Michaels. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit follow in the podcast store and leave us a review. It helps people find our show. Follow us on Twitter at Breaking Even Pod, or you can also find me at Ned Michaels. And remember, we'll be back next Thursday for more Breaking Even, which is brought to you by Visit Mississippi. Jump online, visit Mississippi.org. See everything that's going on down there.